It was always a small start, a disagreement, a misunderstanding, a moment where two people stopped hearing each other and start defending themselves instead. Most of us walk away, shake it off, call it nothing. But in Rodney Phillips' world, nothing is never nothing. One crack in trust becomes a fault line. One lie becomes a landslide. And danger doesn't arrive wearing a villain's mask. It arrives wearing the face of someone you once believed in. Tonight, we step into a story that lived in a filing cabinet for 37 years, waiting for the right moment to come alive, and for the man who wrote it at 19 to return and finish what he started. This is Doyle. You're listening to Spirit Talk Show, Bedtime Stories for Grown-Ups. In this episode, we dive into the shadowed territory where conflict becomes consequence and a single disagreement can unravel lives. Our guest, Rodney Phillips, is the author of Dissension, a disagreement that leads to discord, a gripping exploration of loyalty, pride, betrayal, and the thin and fragile line that holds relationships together until someone intentionally or not cuts it. Rodney was born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where he still lives and draws inspiration from the communities, tensions, and the humanity he observes around him. With a master's degree in human resource leadership management and a successful career in the pharmaceutical industry, he brings a keen understanding of ambition, power, and moral complexity to his storytelling. But here's what makes Rodney truly fascinating. He started writing Dissension when he was 19 years old. Then he put it away, literally, in a filing cabinet, untouched for 37 years. And when his home became an empty nest, he opened the drawer, dusted off the pages, and realized the story had been waiting for him all along. Updated and refined and sharpened by decades of life experience, Dissension became the novel it was always meant to be, a study in how fast trust breaks, how far people can fall when ego steps in, and how danger often comes from the last place we expect. Beyond writing, Rodney has spent more than 20 years mentoring young athletes, shaping leadership and character on and off the field. His dedication to personal development bleeds into his fiction, into flawed characters, painful choices, and the haunting reality that sometimes the hero and the villain share the same heartbeat. His website, rodneyphillips.com, offers readers insights, news, and hints about the sequel fans are already asking for. So, wow, you wrote this book. It took you, it didn't take you 37 years to write the book. You started it when you were well, you could say it took you 37 years to write it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, crazy, right? I started writing the book when I was 19. And it sat in notebooks and these like cards. I worked at a furniture store, so I was writing notes on the back of these overstock cards that we used for layaway. Yeah. And it sat in our file cabinet for 37 years until I ended up finishing it. So it's almost like you had two authors write the book, right?
Well,
me at 19 and me at 56.
I'm sure.
But I don't think the book would have been as good, if I would have finished it at 19.
Well, at 19 too. My son's 19. He just left the house, so I understand the empty nest stuff. But yeah, he, a 19-year-old probably has a different life outlook than a 56-year-old.
Yeah, and that's actually, I think, what made the book so good and why I'm getting so much positive feedback on it is because I was able to take my life experience, infuse it back into the characters and the storyline, and pursue some, different themes with it as well, too.
So, but by the way, my co-host here, like Howie, is here with me in the studio. Okay. So if you hear like another voice, it's not just my alter ego. He is here. But he
well, tell him I said hi.
Hi.
How's it going?
He says hi, Howie. And Howie doesn't like to be on camera, so look at you. You only get to see me. So you started writing. Why can I not remember?
Dissension.
It's just a hard word for me to say. It's not. I can read the word, but every time because I want to call it dissidence, and I don't know why I think that. But you started writing Dissension at 19. You didn't return for 37 years. What did your young version like? Like, do you think how did you understand conflict differently at 19 and 56?
Yeah, so well, interesting, I would say drastically different, right?
Yeah.
Because, what I thought was conflict at 19, and after, 37 years. So I coached football and lacrosse and boys and girls lacrosse and for like over 20 years as well. And then obviously I've worked, in my career. So conflict that you see now as compared to what I thought conflict was
Yeah.
at 19 is like vastly different. So
So did
I
you
think
go ahead?
I was going to say so I came up with the name Dissension now, right?
Yeah.
I didn't even have a name really for the book when I first started writing it.
So what was
So
the
that kind of
like? Did you
drive.
always remember it was in your cabinet? Like, what was the moment?
Yep.
Like, was there a moment where you said, "This is now," or did you rediscover it after many years?
Yeah, so I actually rediscovered it because of my wife. So, like I said, well, I have a son that he just turned 20 in December. And then I have a daughter who's 22. They're both in college. And then I'm no longer coaching football or lacrosse. So I was and I work full time during the week.
Yeah.
So I was kind of driving my wife a little crazy during the weekends because I was used to getting up at, early in the morning and I'd be gone all day.
Yeah.
And my wife is like, "You're driving me nuts. Can you find something to do? Can you get a hobby?" And I said, "Well, maybe I'll pull my book out, see what I have." And she's like, "You mean all those notebooks that we've been carrying around?" Because we took them to like 3 different houses. And I'm like, "Yeah, I might pull that out, see what I have." So I started working on it on the weekends, and I call it making an appointment with my book. Because in
Okay.
my job, my normal job, I go from appointment to appointment. That's how it works. And so I call it making an appointment with my book. And so Saturday, Sunday mornings, I spent like a little over probably 2 months of Saturday writing, but I took every word for word from the notebooks, from the cards, whatever I had,
Yeah.
and I put it into the computer. And then I went and I looked from there. And then it took me like a year to finish the book from there.
And sorry, I think Harry was going to ask you a question. Yeah, go ahead.
Scroll down just a bit.
Scroll down. Scroll down.
The other way.
Oh, the other way. Sorry.
So, if you entered everything word for word, was there anything in the original draft that you kept unchanged? Any line or scene or in character that rang true after all these years?
There was a lot actually. There was a lot there. All the characters are the same. Like I didn't change, the names of the characters, their positions, those sort of things. So that all stayed the same. A lot of the background that I had with the kind of like twists in the story, most of that was there. I would say if I had to guess, I probably had like anywhere from like 60 to 70 chapters that I had written at 19. And it has a lot of chapters in it because one of the big influences of mine, was James Patterson, who has like small chapters that kind of keep the story rolling. And because, Dissension is about a young lady that gets caught between a war that breaks out between two rival drug cartels that have been at peace for a long period of time. There's a lot going on, right? Because I got the two cartels, I have the FBI, I have the my main character Kylie, and so I wanted shorter chapters to kind of like keep that story moving.
Keep it
So
moving.
how the book is written, and I don't know if you gentlemen have read the book yet, but it alternates, right? So one cartel, next cartel, not in a specific pattern, but then, FBI. So everything's like happening at the same time, but so like what's going on. So a lot of that kind of stayed the same. What I changed though was my son actually came up with this idea when I first opened up and started writing the book again and then let my kids know that I was working on this. Was originally when I first started writing it, I had it set in Pittsburgh and Vegas. And, in the 80s, Vegas was considered like Sin City, right? So as a teenager, that's what I thought, like Vegas, Sin City, that's where all the cartels are. That's where all the, stuff happens. But then my son read like the first like 4 chapters, and he's like, Dad, why do you have the cartels in Vegas and not in Miami? He's like, all the cartels are down in Miami. So then I started doing some research, and it was Miami and Texas, where most of the cartels are. They are in Vegas and stuff, but most of it is Miami and Texas. So I knew Miami a lot more, and his idea kind of rang true with Miami. So then I changed all the chapters that I had that were in Vegas, and I made it Miami. So that was a big change. The other big change that I made was obviously there was no cell phones, back then.
Okay.
There was no fentanyl. Right now, fentanyl is very apparent, in our country. So I added fentanyl into it. I added cell phones. I updated a lot of things that way. But then I think really like my life experience going back into the characters. So another big influence on mine was Patricia Cornwell. I don't know if you guys have read anything by her.
I've heard of her.
But she's very like good with character development. So that was important to me to really build realistic characters. So I created a document on each character where, I have like their hair color, eye color, height, weight, those sort of things. But I also delved into a little bit more and have them, what their personality is, any flaws that they have, any bad habits, because I wanted to create realistic characters, the people could relate to. And that's kind of resonating with, podcasts that I've been on, but also I've been doing a lot of book signings. I've done a lot of book clubs, and it's amazing in a book club, the passion that the people have for your book is incredible.
Really
and the
cool
questions that they ask, it is great. I would recommend, any author to, if you can, go to a book club and listen to the passion that they have.
That's great. You're doing really. So I can't help thinking of, so your book has themes of conflict, loyalty, and betrayal. So why was 19-year-old you thinking about conflict, loyalty, and betrayal? Like, why was it on your mind then?
Well, so conflict was probably the most biggest thing about at 19 years old. The loyalty and disloyalty that's in the book, I infused in after the fact.
Okay.
So I wanted the conflict to happen between the two cartels and something to spark that conflict where, then, at 19, that was a big thing of the story. And then also there's a couple twists that happen in the book that I had, embedded in there. But then I explored those other themes that you mentioned, like loyalty, disloyalty from my life experience. So one cartel, they're kind of like loyal to a fault, even though they might not believe in the leader, the direction that he's going, they're following and they're in lockstep. The other cartel, I kind of then explored the opposite of disloyalty, and what is happening there. And that's kind of like where the dissension comes into play, because you think about like any relationship that you have, whether it's a friendship, a colleague that you work with, a marriage, communication is at the core of that, right? So in the book Dissension, there's a lack of communication between the two cartels which then kind of spirals it out of control. If only they would have communicated, they would have realized, hey, it wasn't the other leader that was making some of these decisions that happened that, ended up crossing territorial boundaries and causing, the dissension that then ends up happening in the book. And then you find out, why Kylie's being specifically targeted by the hitman that they send after her. So she basically has a huge growth arc with her character where she starts out as a normal college student studying criminal law. She gets dragged into this cartel war starts getting hunted by the hitman, and then you find out like why she's specifically being targeted, which I won't, give away.
So you've got personality and you think in a way. So was there a character in the book that was most challenging for you to write about, and why?
I would say my two strong female characters that are on the cover. So the one is Kylie, who is my main character. The other one is Teresa, who is my FBI agent. And I was, and this was, at 56, not at 19, but I was specific, which I wanted two strong female characters that were caught in a male-dominated society. And with, we were talking, I have a daughter, right? I've tried to raise my daughter to be strong, independent woman that didn't have to rely on a male, for their identity. So I was very specific with those two characters to make sure that they could hold their own in a male-dominated society. And obviously, with cartels, there's a lot of, violence and headstrongness and, things of that nature. So I wanted them to be able to stand up to those pressures. So those two characters were probably the most difficult for me to write, right? Because then I wanted to get myself ingrained into how they would think. And like I was talking about with, the sheets that I created, I tried to, put myself in their shoes. How would they react, right? They're more strategic, more level-headed, more leadership-driven, as opposed to being brash or, jump into violence right away, things of that nature. So I would say those two are probably the most difficult.
Yeah. And so you talked about your kids were reading chapters as you were writing it. So how much were they involved in giving you advice? Like your daughter obviously read it. Did she give you advice about how women her age would think?
Well, it's funny that you're asking me that, Doyle, because neither of my children have read the whole book. They got more excuses about why they haven't read the whole book. My son Dylan read about 4 chapters, gave me, that advice about changing the location, but has not then picked up the finished book and read it. They're both in college, right? So you get all the excuses about, they're studying, they're doing this, they're doing that. Kaylee has done like an overview with it, but not, read the whole book.
Well, I understand. My son has not listened to the podcast. Hundreds of thousands of people have, but my son hasn't listened to it. And my younger son, I have a 14-year-old and 19-year-old, and my younger son, he used to listen to it a little bit when he was younger, but, it's like I heard, I've heard some people talking on like interviews, like famous people saying, my kids don't think I'm cool. They just think I'm a dorky dad, right? I might be like Harrison Ford says, my kids just think I'm an idiot, right? Just like all teenagers. Just because I'm Indiana Jones doesn't mean my kids think I'm cooler,
Right, absolutely. And that's, kind of the situation I'm in as well, too, because I've asked them several times, have you started the book? Have you read the book? Have you, and obviously, no, Dad, I'm working on X, Y, Z,
It's probably never going to happen, to be honest.
Well, hopefully it will happen sometime, but unfortunately they have not.
So
but I'm like 80 some chapters into the sequel
as
well. So the publisher asked me in April to start. They asked me if I had any sequel ideas, and I threw a couple out there. And what I'd like to see happen, as long as this, first book does well, is do the sequel, which I'm about 80 some chapters. I'm doing the same thing. My wife calls me the weekend writer because I only write on the weekends. I have the sequel, and then I have a third idea that I bounced off them that they loved, which was I want to do a prequel. So I want to have the sequel called Dissension, the co-op, and then the prequel, the third book, be called Dissension, the beginning. And I want to take us back to when Kylie was a teenager, what was happening with the two cartels that was happening around her, which then had dragged her into Dissension, into this book. and she didn't realize that it was going on, so I want to kind of like create that loop, if you will.
So was there one scene or part that really, because we've talked to some writers and they say the story comes out of them. They're like a vessel rather than they're making it up. And was there a part that got under your skin that you thought about long after writing it?
Yeah, I feel like probably, there's a couple scenes or a couple chapters, I guess I should say, it's not scenes, but a couple chapters where they're like going after like cartel, safe houses and warehouses and stuff like that I feel like I should have enhanced maybe a little bit more than I could have. So that they're probably ones that stuck with me a little bit after the finished product. And then in the new book, I'll tell you a chapter that was extremely difficult, probably the most difficult chapter that I've had trouble writing. And in the sequel, I wanted this basically a weekend retreat, if you will, of law enforcement. So my FBI agent invites the DEA agents, the police, my main character, to a weekend retreat where the idea was to have a dinner all together and then the next day do like a working session. Where they share ideas and, everything that's happening and their information and stuff. And I probably wrote that dinner scene chapter 15 times, at least. And I had these diagrams where I was moving characters around, where they were sitting, who they were sitting next to, the whole 9 yards. And there's some specific information that I wanted to come out of those conversations that kind of like connect the dots, right? Light bulbs to go off with some of these guys that connect the dots. Well, think about you going out to a dinner with a large group of people. There's I think 12 people at this table. You and I are just meeting each other, right? So our conversation is going to be totally different than you and Howie, right? Who have known each other for a long time, right? So your conversations will be totally different than our conversation at this dinner table.
Yeah.
So it was extremely challenging. Well, then the more that I thought about it, I'm in pharmaceuticals sales in breast cancer. So if we get together for like a national meeting or a regional meeting or, whatever, typically we have the meeting first and then have a dinner. So by changing my perspective of what I wanted to accomplish on this, retreat, I changed the perspective to have the meeting first, have them share the information, introduce each other. It's a lot easier to introduce somebody in a conference than it is at a dinner table when you're not by everybody, right? So then I switched it to then having the dinner afterwards and was able to connect the dots where I wanted the story to go. So that in the sequel is probably the most challenging aspect that I had. And then it just dawned on me, rely on your experience, right?
Well, I mean, so that seems like that was a logistical issue, trying to decide how people speak to each other and where they should sit. Yep. Was there a part that was emotionally hard to, like, I'm sure the cartels, there was some violence and stuff. Was there a part that was, like, emotionally hard to portray?
Yes. In the Dissension, the book that we're talking about, there's a part where two brothers kind of clash, and I won't, tell you the details of it, but that was emotionally difficult to write.
Okay.
And
but don't reveal too much. No spoilers. So, hey,
yeah. I don't want to spoil it, but that was a difficult scene to write. Was the two brothers where they kind of clashed.
So we do storytelling in the podcast. I don't know if you've listened to some episodes, and one of the things we do is we research our guests and we look them up. We find stuff written about them and written by them, and we form the story, which is a tribute to you, which we'd like to have how we read to you right now. And so this is a story that's based on your work and you, and it's supposed to be a tribute. So if you'll indulge us for a few minutes here, Howie's going to read it to you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
The story that waited 37 years. Some stories arrive fully formed. Rodney Phillips' story did not. It came to him when he was 19, young, observant, and already fascinated by the cracks that form quietly between people. While his friends were busy mastering adult life, Rodney was studying something far more dangerous. What happens when trust breaks, and what grows inside the silence that follows. He wrote chapters, characters, a disagreement that should have ended with a handshake, but instead detonated into a chain of consequences no one could escape. And then he put the pages away, into a drawer, into a filing cabinet, into the deep, unlit part of life where unfinished dreams go to sleep. Most stories don't survive that, but this one did. For 37 years, Dissension waited, patiently and quietly, through Rodney's degrees, career, fatherhood, leadership, mentoring, victories, losses, and the slow, steady expansion of wisdom that only life can teach. And then one day, in the hush of an empty nest, Rodney opened the old drawer. A younger version of himself was waiting there, asking, "Are you ready now?" This time he was. The 19-year-old who wrote about conflict met the man who lived it. The man who had seen ambition rise and fall, who had watched pride undo leaders, who had mentored young athletes through the very fractures he wrote about decades earlier. Together, the young writer and the seasoned one, they finished the book. Dissension became not just a novel, but a mirror reflecting the uncomfortable truth. Danger doesn't always come from villains. Sometimes it comes from people we trust. Sometimes it comes from ourselves. And the fallout of a single disagreement can echo longer, louder, and deeper than anyone expects. Rodney's work reminds us that conflict isn't noise, it's revelation. It shows who we truly are, what we fear, and what we're willing to sacrifice. Tonight, we honor the resilience of a story that refused to die, and the man who finally gave it the ending it deserved. Rodney, your journey proves that no dream is ever too old, no idea too forgotten, no drawer too dusty for a story that still has something to say. And your book, Dissension, is not just a tale of conflict. It's a testament to the courage of finishing what we started, no matter how long it takes.
Wow. Okay. What you think of that?
Oh, wow. Howie, that is unbelievable. Thank you so much. That is really cool.
We can send you a copy of this. Our notes.
Oh, that would be tremendous. I really appreciate that and your hard work putting that together. It's really something. And it's funny that you mentioned about, not letting your dreams die right now.
Yeah.
As a father, I've been able to, tell my kids, hey, never let your dream die. If you want to achieve something, I started writing this book at 19. Now I can go on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and on Google Play and all these other places and see my book, right? It's like crazy. So really, guys, thank you for that. That's really nice.
Well, you're welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. We have another thing that we also made a poem about a tribute poem, which we'll read in a little bit. But also, I'd asked, did you want to read an excerpt from anything, like any part of your book on the show tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I could. You want me to read like the prologue?
Sure, yeah. If you're willing, it'd be great.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So here's the prologue to Dissension, a disagreement that leads to discord. The night air hung thick with Miami's ever-present humidity, wrapping the city in a suffocating embrace. Neon lights flickered along Ocean Drive, casting distorted reflections in rain-slick streets, the remnants of a brief but violent storm. In the alleys and back rooms of the city's underbelly, the storm had only just begun. The game had been in motion for years, long before those playing it even knew they were pawns. Borders had shifted, alliances had formed, and have since become fractured. and blood had been spilled in quiet corners of the city where no one dared to look. The rules were unwritten, but they were absolute. Power demanded obedience, betrayal demanded retribution, and the past, no matter how deeply buried, had a way of clawing its way back to the surface. Some called it business, others called it war. For those caught in its grip, it was simply survival. A phone rang in the dim glow of a downtown penthouse, cutting through the silence like a blade against glass. The man who answered spoke in measured tones, his voice betraying neither urgency nor fear. Across town, another call was made, this time to a woman whose life will be spent unraveling truths hidden in the shadows. And somewhere between them, in a place where trust was currency and loyalty a death sentence, a decision was made that could never be undone. What had started as a feud was now a reckoning. And before the sun rose over Miami's restless skyline, the first shot would be fired.
Dissension is called Disagreement That Leads to Discord, is available now in Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and you can also go to your website, rodneyphillips.com. But thank you so much. That was probably...
Yep. It's rodneyphillipsauthor.com.
Oh, did I write? Oh, yeah, sorry. Rodney Phillips author. I do have that written there, and I was just so excited about the reading, I didn't read it right. rodneyphillipsauthor.com, and you can get it. Is available now, and when can we expect a sequel?
Yeah, so I'm hoping, sometime later this year for the sequel. Like I said, I'm about 85-ish chapters, I guess, into that. The sequel isn't going as fast as originally anticipated because I've been doing, a lot on the first book, being on podcasts and book signings and, things of that nature. So that's kind of cut into some of my writing time. But so I'm excited about the sequel. So the sequel will be called Dissension, the Co-op.
Okay.
And hopefully sometime later this year, it'll be out.
So you're saying 80 chapters. Like, how long do you anticipate it being? How many chapters does a book have?
It's probably going to be a little bit longer than the first book. Now, granted, remember I'd said there's a lot of like small chapters that might be 1 page, 2 page. So the first book, Dissension, I had 117 chapters, which was 267 pages, and then the epilogue made it like 271. I'm probably anticipating that this book is going to be in like the 360, 370 range. Okay. So maybe, if I'm guessing, about 130 chapters, let's call it.
So you're a coach, and my son plays football and basketball, and you probably experience a lot of kids who have a mindset about conflict and like their ambition to be the next sports star. So how do you think you're like being that leader and seeing that from 19 to 56 like influence the way you wrote?
Yeah, so I think it actually had a big influence on me because, as you know, coaching is very challenging. And one thing that I've learned over the years, is to me, feedback is a gift. Whether it's negative feedback, positive feedback, to me, it's a gift, right? If somebody takes the time to tell you, hey, either you're doing great at this or, hey, why don't you try doing it this way? To me, it's a gift. And in coaching, I always tried to instill that in the boys and girls that I coached is if I'm giving you feedback, listen, right? Because I'm trying to help you, right? Yeah. Right. And in football, I coach defense. So, a lot of like hip turn, hand technique, footwork, gap control, so a lot of feedback that, telling them, where they needed to be, how they needed to react, things of that nature. And I would always try and instill in them, hey, listen, right? Because I'm trying to help you, right? And obviously lead with positive feedback, and then have some what I call opportunity areas, and in lacrosse, like ground balls or, hugely important, right? Whether it's boys or girls lacrosse, if you control the ball, you control the game, right? So that was one thing that I would always, stress with the kids is, hey, we got to get the ball, right? And like you had said, a lot of kids at a younger age, they have a lot of fears, right? So a lot of fears come into play that, well, I don't want to go for the ground ball because somebody else is going for it, that sort of thing. So you have to coach them through that and put them in situations that they could succeed. And that was one thing that I prided myself on coaching young athletes, in football or lacrosse, is putting them in situations that they could succeed, right? So, understand your athlete, what their capabilities were, what's the positive strengths that they have, what, areas of concern that you had, right? And then make sure that you put them in situations that they could succeed, like not putting them in positions where you knew that they weren't going to do well, right? I had I could use a kid as an example that he wanted to play corner in football, and coach, put me in corner, put me in corner, put me in corner. Well, he wasn't good in space, but he was extremely good in a small area. So I had him playing defensive end.
Yeah.
He ends up getting a scholarship to college to play defensive end, writes me this unbelievable text message and sends me a thank you card that I, taught him to, stay within his realm and taught him techniques that he excelled at, right? And then he ends up, being able to go to college. But he was dead set in his mind. He wanted to play corner.
It's my son really liked basketball, but he's a stocky boy, and he played center in the football team, and he's really good at it. So trying to get, maybe basketball's not your game. Maybe being a defense because he's a big boy. He's a strong big boy. Maybe that's the place for you because you don't want to be. And also he hurt his knee because sometimes those boys they really want to impress the coach, right? And they sometimes push themselves a little bit too much. And he so respects his coaches that he pushed himself to a point of injuring his knee in sixth grade. So they have to. He's going to play again, but so. What I was thinking of, how we always talk about police being heroes and firemen being heroes, but the real heroes seem like people like you who take their free time, because I know to be a coach, the hours and the amount of time that you put into it, and it's an unpaid volunteer position. Yeah. So I think you're the real hero. People like you who give up. I work in a high school, and the coaches do so much don't little stipend, maybe $3,000 a year, and they do. Yeah, so thank you for. So why aren't you coaching anymore right now?
What'd you say?
Why aren't you coaching? Why aren't you coaching anymore now?
Yeah, so I mostly was focused on youth sports. So that's where majority of my coaching was. I did some scouting for high school, where I would scout the other teams that they were going to be able to play. But really, to coach in high school, you have to be able to, be available at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon and working full time, unless you're a teacher, that's a challenge, especially for me, so that's why I spend a lot of time in youth. And the other thing is I loved working with youth athletes for a lot of the reasons what you were talking about, because you're really molding them and getting them to trust, right, and trust in leadership, and in a team aspect, you could learn a lot. Another thing that I used to drill into my athletes is, if you're coachable, you're employable, right? And that was because if you're coachable, then I could teach you what you need to, learn, and that'll translate to you being in the real world and being coachable and being able to take feedback and be able to understand leaders and get along with, a lot of different personalities, right? Because you never know who's going to be your manager, who's going to be your teacher, who's going to be, your coach. And you need to be able to adapt to those situations and get along with those personalities. So I spent a lot of time working with the young athletes in those aspects, be coachable, take feedback, Have conversations. If you, that was the other thing is I would always tell my athletes, ask me questions. If you don't understand something, you don't understand what you're supposed to be doing, ask. There's no wrong answer. Just ask. And because knowledge is so important, and especially in sports. Like you take like a football team, right? Everybody has to be doing their job, right? And then everybody has to be confident that their buddy's doing their job, and I'm going to do my job, right? It's when you have a breakdown is when somebody's trying to do too much. And they lose gap control or, what have you, and then you get gashed for a long run, but, so I think a lot of those aspects are like what you just talked about with, making sure that the athlete is comfortable, they can have success, they understand what they're supposed to be doing. And if they have questions, be able to ask. Right? Because, some athletes, they're afraid to ask, because they're like, oh, well, the coach, feels like I should know this already, right? We've gone over it, numerous times, but I still don't understand, and I always, tried to have that open mind where ask me. I know I've covered it, whatever, umpteen times, but if you're not understanding it, don't be afraid.
Well, I think that also people shouldn't underestimate. I've been a teacher for many years, and the kids who had the most difficult time in class and community and being with their peers were the people who weren't involved in any kind of team of any kind, whether it be theater, whether it be sports. And I see my son's social status just soar when he's on, because he wore his football jersey to school today, and so he's right. Part of that. He's part of that group of people, and and he's loved, and he walks around with his head up because I think we shouldn't underestimate that. That's really valuable for kids.
Yes, absolutely. And the other thing that I don't think that people take into consideration a lot with sports is hard work. Right? Mm-hmm. You put the hard work into anything that you do, you're going to have the reward. Right? And we practice to make sure that on game day, you're doing it well. If you don't practice and put the hard work in during the week, then you're not going to perform well, in front of the lights.
But it's also good. It's also good to know that sometimes you can have the passion and the desire and the hard work. Like my son loves basketball, and he's so passionate in the hard work, but he's just not built for basketball because he's a stocky boy. He can't move as fast as the other boys. And so there's times when you've worked hard, and we value that, and you're passionate, and we value that. But you can't be the star player for some reason. But that's okay because you still have the value of those other things that helps you. And he knows that, and he understands that, and he's loved by his team and coach. I always joke that I love coming. I like going to his games to watch him watch basketball because he doesn't get to play terribly often because he's not the star player. So I drive an hour to watch him watch basketball. he plays a little bit, but not a ton. I drove an hour last night to see his game, and he didn't play. And it's okay, but he saw that I was there, and he smiled because he saw that I was there.
And that goes a long way, right? That you're there to support him whether he's in the game or not.
Yeah.
And that's going to resonate with him and stick with him, and he might not, bring it up to you right away, but, years down the line, he's going to say, you know what, Dad, you were always there. Right. But there's things with basketball that he's learned that even though, that might not be his, sport, that he could translate to football, right? Because of the hip turn, your footwork, all that translates from sport to sport, So if he takes what he's learned from basketball, and you said that, he's a bigger kid and he wants to play either defensive or offensive line, those translate right to that, right? So, if that's what he's pursuing now, and he takes what he's learned in the basketball arena, puts it onto the football field. Look at all the top tight ends. They were all basketball players, that are in NFL football. Majority of them play basketball.
It's funny. You're using words like tight end and stuff. I'm from Ireland, and I don't really know football rules terribly well, but I'm envisioning the tight end is somebody who's on the defensive line and he's on the ends? Is that who the tight end is?
No, the tight end is actually an offensive player.
Okay.
That he's kind of like a hybrid between a receiver, like a wide receiver, and a lineman. So they'll keep them in tight to the line for blocking purposes.
Okay.
But then they can release out into the field to actually receive passes as well. But sometimes then they spread the tight end out.
Okay, yeah.
You know, so you have to have that versatility. What you're thinking of is a defensive end, which was what I used an example with one of the kids that I coached that ended up going on to college. A defensive end controls the outside of the end on the defense. Okay. And basically what they want to try and do is keep the players from getting outside of them, right? And they want to kind of hem everybody into the middle.
See, I grew up with soccer and Gaelic for football, and one thing when you come to United States and watch games, sports games, because if you watch a soccer game or a Gaelic football game, they play for 40 minutes straight, unless like someone gets hurt, right? But when you watch an American sport, you're like, why are they stopping so much? There's so much stopping, and I understand why now. I understand the concept, but it's hard because you can watch them play for 40 minutes in Ireland and straight through watching soccer and Gaelic football. Hey, so I think Howie's excited to read the poem that we wrote for you. I feel like
awesome. Yeah, that sounds great. And I was going to say before Howie reads the poem, if you're from Ireland, then that means you're a big time Steelers fan, then correct?
Steelers? Oh no, I don't know who the Steelers are. Is that a football team? I'm from Ireland, and didn't really get into American sports. Where are the Steelers from?
Pittsburgh
Steelers.
Pittsburgh.
I've been to Pittsburgh actually because I've ridden the Allegheny Trail with my son. We biked.
Isn't that cool?
It's really awesome. We started there in Pittsburgh, and we flew to Pittsburgh, and then took the Amtrak back to Pittsburgh, and because we rode all the way to Washington, and we stayed in Marysville. We stayed in Confluence. We stayed in lots of cool. We biked the whole thing. It was amazing. Cumberland.
Really, really awesome trail, and that's really that you were able to do that with your son because of huge bonding. But, I don't know if you guys stopped along the trail and, stayed in hotels, or if some people camp, hotels, and they'll have a tent that they throw up along the way and stuff. But really, really, really cool experience.
Yeah, it's beautiful. For those of you listening who don't know, the Allegheny Trail is a reclaimed train tracks from Pittsburgh to D.C. and canal paths that they've paved, and now you can bike on them. And they're amazing. Yeah. And it's like, you're going over tunnels, you're going over aqueducts. It's just really cool. And we stayed in Confluence, which is a place where George Washington camped when he was in the area, and that was really fun. So,
and it goes. A lot of it follows the river, right? Because it follows the railroad tracks, so it follows a couple different rivers, not one river. It follows a couple different rivers. But really cool. And there's a lot of books out on it as well, too, if people are interested. Where it talks about the Allegheny Passage.
And they're also, I believe, that their passage is close to where the plane landed in 9/11, and they're going to change.
It goes past there.
The trail is going to go past there too. So Howie here, like Howie, after we're talking about Howie. There we go. Howie's poeming time.
All right. The drawer that held a storm. He wrote a storm at 19, lightning on loose leaf, characters trembling with ambition, and choices sharp enough to cut. Then he folded the thunder, placed it gently in a drawer, and let the years layer over it like dust on an unanswered question. Life happened. Degrees, leadership, children, late nights and early mornings, teaching others what loyalty and backbone look like. But the story waited. Stories always do. They know when a writer isn't finished growing yet. And when the house fell quiet, no slammed doors, no sports practice, no teenage footsteps, the drawer clicked open again. There it was, a younger man's voice, a warning wrapped in fiction, a disagreement sharp enough to unravel an entire world. And Rodney, older now, wiser now, steady now, picked up the storm and finished it. Because some truths take decades to understand. Now his book walks the world, whispering its lesson. Trust breaks loudly, danger wears familiar faces, and every disagreement has the potential to rewrite a life. Rodney reclaimed his storm, and in doing so, he reminded us all, it's never too late to finish the story that first taught you who you might become.
Wow, Howie, unbelievable. Hopefully you guys are going to share these,
I will.
both of these with me. But Howie, what do you write? Like, it sounds like you love poems and.
Well, these are stories that we collected together, and we kind of made the skeleton of the story together, and then we used some AI to like organize it a little bit. So it's really like it's a collective work of research, us and AI. So it's not. I don't want you to think this is our original work that we wrote. Well, we wrote the bones of it, but so I mean, we like. How'd you feel about like AI in writing?
In writing, I'm not really like completely on board with it. For like research and stuff, I think it's great. I did use it to research publishers. So when I first was looking to get my book published, I did a query on ChatGPT where I asked it to look for publishers in the United States that took new authors with new ideas, and that's what I put in as the search criteria, and it only came back with 4.
And did you get?
And we sent it to all 4. The first one turned it down within like 24 hours, and the other 3 actually wanted the book. So then I ended up doing a virtual call with those 3, and before we decided to go with our publisher. But yeah, I mean, I think it's the wave of the future as far as, AI is concerned, with everything that it's getting into. And I think like jobs like, paralegals and things of that nature, they can get the information so much faster with AI than they can with everybody, having to research it.
I think it's going to replace.
So.
It might replace paralegals. They might not need paralegals at all in the future.
Exactly. I think it's going to, in the next couple of years, absolutely replace that issue. Unfortunately,
it is replacing a lot of tech jobs.
They could just do it so much faster.
Yeah, tech jobs
exactly.
There's lots of tech companies out here are laying people off, which is sad because 10 years ago we were telling people, get into tech, you'll always have a job, because that's what we were told to tell people at the time. And I work in tech. I'm a technology teacher, but I'm a little older. I'm in your age bracket. You said you're 56. I'm only a few years behind you, and Howie is a few less years behind you. So we're in that age gap that we might be thinking in the future, within 10 years of retiring, possibly, or maybe 12 years. So we're not too worried about the work world right now, because I'm probably exiting in the next 8-10 years, right? So,
and that's kind of like where I'm at, probably 8-10 years as well, looking to retire. And I would love to do this writing in retirement. I really enjoy creating the characters and stories. And
when this is the best seller and the next one in the trilogy becomes the next Harry Potter bestseller, maybe you can retire in 2 years. When you're making big author money, right?
I'd have to sell a heck of a lot of books in order for that to happen. But
I'm sure every book that became an amazing bestseller went through a period of time where people were thinking, "Oh, we're going to sell maybe 1,000 of these." So, did your publishing? Was it a traditional publishing deal you got, or was there was a hybrid thing?
No, so that's the thing. Like when I did that search, traditional publishers really don't take new authors. Yeah. They want your established Frida McFaddens and Tom Clancy's and your established authors, and they give them money for them to then write their next 100th novel or whatever. So new authors, there's really a couple different ways. Some people do self-publishing. What I did was what's called a hybrid, which I had to put a little bit of money up front for the graphic design, the book editing, the printing, and then they help me with the back end with the marketing as part of that hybrid. So they did my website. They created. If you go on my website, there's a really cool book trailer that they did that's on the website. They got my ISBN number. They got the copyright. They did the editing of the book, and then also they get you out. Well, they send out queries for you to go do talks at like book signings, like at Barnes and Nobles and things of that nature. They launched the book out on all the platforms, but each platform is different as far as like at Walmart, it's only in paperback. Google Play, it's only, an audio book. Barnes and Noble has all three. The publishing company has all three, an ebook as well. Amazon, they just have it as ebook and paperback. And that's one thing, like you were mentioning AI, which obviously I'm a new author. This is my first time going through this. But what I did not realize is Audible for Amazon, they won't take an AI reader. And my publisher used an AI reader to read my book for the audiobook.
Yeah.
Audible won't take it. So that's one platform that I'm not on is for my audiobook. But it's a publisher decision, I guess you'd say. But
well, I mean, I like you're the third author I'm going to tell about this wonderful narrator I know that's been on my show called Chris Turk. I'll send you his website. He actually,
that would be awesome.
Yeah, one of my authors that we talked to a few weeks ago is actually using him now as his narrator for his book.
I would love to talk to him. I would love to talk to him.
I'll send you.
And one thing that you and Howie, give me your opinion on this.
Yeah.
I wanted a female reader, right? Because of the fact that I have two strong female characters caught in a male-dominated world, and I thought that it's easier to have a female do male voices than it is a male to then do female voices. So that's why I was like, dead set on having a female, because they gave me the choice between me reading the book or using a male, AI or a female AI. And I went in the direction of a female AI, and they gave me, I think it was like 21 different AI voices to go through. And they read like a splattering of the same, like 7 chapters,
I hear your dogs in the background. My dogs always like to bark at the wrong time too.
But sorry about that. My wife has a friend that came over. They're actually, ironically, in a book club, and they're trying to figure out what book they're going to do next.
I have a book. You come in. I have a book that you guys could do next.
Yeah.
You're coming like, what am I, chopped liver over here? I got a book for you.
Yeah. Well, they did. So that was it's interesting. I did a book club with boys' moms that I coached at football and lacrosse. Okay. And there was 12 of them. And that was really cool. I got to tell you, I told my wife I came out of there like on a high, right? Oh, yeah. Because, the passion that these ladies had with the characters, and then told me, hey, in the sequel, don't kill off this character because I really like him, And the questions that they were asking was incredible. I came out of there, I'm like, man, I would do a book club every week. I was there for like 2.5 hours, and I would have stayed for 4. I mean, it was that fun, and they did my book as their book club book, and I autographed all the books.
Yeah, that's funny.
And they took a picture with me and stuff. It was a lot of fun.
Well,
it was a lot of fun.
Well, you asked for our opinion. I know that when I originally thought of your book being narrated, I did think of a male voice. And I know that Chris, my friend, does women and male and voices all really well when he does it. I know he does it really well, but I don't know. Is there some statistic about how books are received if a male voice reads it over a female voice reads it? Is there some?
That is a great question. I do not know the answer to that. I just was kind of passionate about what I had said with, the female, having two strong female characters or continous male dominated. And I felt like a female would be able to adapt to the males as other than the reverse. But that was, I didn't do any research on that or anything. So that's actually interesting that you say that, because I don't know what the statistics are.
Yeah, I know that. I know that in film, I mean, I hate to say it, it sounds like prejudice, but male-led films do better than female-led films. That's just a fact of life, and they do better. And it's probably I wish it wasn't like that, but that's a fact of life. Like women's basketball, that doesn't do isn't well as watched as men's basketball, even though it's just as athletic and cool to watch. But it's just the fact is, so I don't know if that transfers over to book reading. But so we're getting pretty close to them kicking me out of the studio here. But what's your message? Because I actually record in a professional studio and I have a time slot. But what is your message for kids who are starting out that want to write or want to or read your book, and what do you want them to come away feeling?
Yeah, so I mean, what kids that want to read the book, I hope that they come away with those type of themes, like how important communication is, how conflict really get you into what are the boundaries, what is hidden behind that truth, right? Because anytime that you have any type of conflict, there's a truth behind there that you have to get to. And if you don't, peel back those layers or whatever to get to that, so I'm hoping that they understand those. And then also, we had talked about the disloyalty and loyalty, right? In Dissension, one cartel, they're following their leader, even though they might not agree with them, right? But they're, just blindly following. And sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad, right? And then on the other side, they actually have some disloyalty going on because, one of the subordinates doesn't believe in their leader, So, I think those are some of the themes that I would like people to, kind of talk about and think about, right? And then as far as people wanting to, write or get into it, I mean, my personality, and we've talked about mentoring and leadership and things of that nature. I'm open to any of your listeners that would want to reach out and bounce ideas or, use me as a mentor and talk through different things. I would be, way open to that.
That's an offer. You might want to be careful with that if you get 1,000 emails. From people.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's one way to look at it. But if I get some emails and people want some help, I definitely would talk through different situations. But I think that whole idea that we touched on of not giving up on your dreams, because I feel like, unfortunately, now we're in a society where people will start something, they want to do something, then they get sidetracked, they start doing something else, and they never go back to what their dreams are, whatever those are. And in our field, or with the becoming an author, it's hard, right? Because you have to really put yourself in the seat of those characters, like we were talking about. Go through the storyline, connect dots, right? And have that story be able to progress. And it's difficult, right? There's a lot of hard work that goes into that, a lot of rewrites and changes and, wording that has to go through there. So just stick with it if that's a goal that your listeners would have,
That's the words from a coach. Stick with it. But, you can get Rodney's book. It's available on Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and Audible soon after we get it re-narrated, right? Or you can go to RodneyPhillipsAuthor.com. But thank you so much for coming on. We're going to watch out for the sequel coming soon, and go buy Rodney's book and reach out to him and see if you need a writing mentor or a coach mentor. I feel like my son would benefit from some of your coaching mentors.
Yeah, have him reach out to me. I would love to talk to him.
So
especially with what you said with him wanting to change sports, or working with a different.
I think what he needs help with is self adequacy. Like when you're hurt, it's okay to tell the coach, "Hey, I need to slow down a little bit here," because he pushed himself to his knees, almost damaging his knees because he didn't want to say no to the coach, right? And so at 12 years old, he has damaged knees. They're better now, but like that's a concern, right? So he has to it's okay to say, this is important, but my health is important too. My knees are important, right?
Yep. So, and you hear that a lot in baseball, right? With especially pitchers, young pitchers, they're using their arms too much, and then they end up having a rotator cuff issue at 16 or whatever.
Yeah, wow.
And, you hear that a lot where they don't want to say, hey, my arm is sore, I can't pitch today.
Yeah.
Their coach wants them to go out there because they might be the best pitcher, and you know what I mean? So you do hear that a lot with young athletes, and they definitely need to speak up.
Well, it's hard in a lot of careers. It's hard to say, I need help, or this isn't working for me, because then you get sidelined, and people don't want to be sidelined. No, not just in sports and careers, you don't want to be sidelined. But hey, thank you so much. We will we'll be in touch again soon, and we really appreciate you being on the show. But
really appreciate it, guys, and great to meet you. And thank you so much for the reading and the poem as well too. Very, very much appreciated.
Well, we will send that to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rodney. Have a great night.
Thanks for spending time with us. Now go make a story worth telling.